There's a certain kind of silence that follows a standing ovation. It happens right after the roar dies down when the arena fades, the lights dim, and you walking backstage with sweat dripping from your temples and a heart still racing from 20 minutes of storytelling through violence. It's not defeat. It's not regret. It's emptiness. And for Seth, that silence has become louder than the applause. For over a decade, he's been the guy you call when something needs fixing, when the main event falls apart, when the golden boy gets injured, when the card looks weak and they need a match to remind people why they watch. He shows up, laces up, delivers, and then he vanishes from the conversation. That's the cruelty of being indispensable. You become invisible. People don't notice the foundation. They just walk on it. While others were being anointed, he was building resumes. While one superstar was rehearsing promos with the company's top riders, Seth was learning how to wrestle with a torn MCL. And when the cameras stopped rolling, he didn't get the private jet or the company documentary. He got a pat on the back and a red-eye flight to Tulsa. He's not the loudest, not the flashiest, not the kind of wrestler who creates headlines with controversy. But when the house lights go down and the bell rings, nobody commands a crowd with more controlled chaos than he does. His matches aren't just physical, they're psychological warfare. Every stomp, every near fall, every smirk between ropes carries years of grit and miles of unspoken pain. And yet, the world keeps looking elsewhere. It's not that people don't respect him. It's that they forget to say it out loud. They remember the Shield. They remember the cash-in. But the countless nights he carried title matches on his back, the half-empty arenas he turned into firestorms, those get filed under expected. Because that's what happens when you always deliver. People stop being amazed. They start assuming, and when the machine moves forward, it drags him with it but never puts him at the front. He isn't bitter. Not publicly. He smiles. He dances in garish suits. He laughs louder than the boos and plays along with the vision. But there's a tension in his eyes, a hint of a man wondering, quietly, what else do I have to do? What do you do when you've already proven you're great? But the spotlight keeps tilting to someone shinier. That's the paradox of being Seth in his prime. He's never been better, never more refined, never more experienced, more in control, more confident. But the cheers still sound like echoes, and the spotlight, it's always just out of reach. He wasn't born into wrestling royalty. He didn't have a family name to ride on or a legacy waiting to be handed over. Just a kid from Davenport, Iowa, with a bad haircut and a stubborn belief that he can matter. Not in the flashy, magazine cover way, but in the real way, the kind where your body of work says everything your voice can't. In the beginning, it wasn't easy. Indie shows and dim gyms, broken rings, bloody foreheads for gas money. He learned early that sacrifice wasn't poetic, it was practical. If you wanted to be something, you had to bleed for it. And he did. He bled through Ring of Honor. He bled into NXT. He clawed his way into the system, not because someone opened the door, but because he broke it down. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Shield. 3 men in tactical gear storming into the WWE at a time when the product felt stale. And Seth, he wasn't just a piece of the group, he was the pulse. The risk taker. The one willing to dive headfirst into barricades and walk out smiling. For the first time, he wasn't just part of the system. He was shaking it. But momentum has a cruel sense of humor. Just when people started believing, he did the unthinkable. He betrayed the group. Steel chair to Roman. A stab to Dean. And suddenly, he was the most hated man in wrestling. Not because of what he did, but because it worked. He wasn't the villain who fumbled the crown. He was the villain who wore it too well. They handed him the keys, the first run, the gold, the spotlight. But it came at a price. The trust of fans, the resentment from peers, the burden of carrying a company that wasn't he sure if it even wanted him at the top. And just when he hit stride, his body gave out. ACL, MCL, meniscus shattered in one awkward twist. 1 second, he's champion. The next, he's in a hospital bed, watching others take his spot. It should have been over. But Seth doesn't retreat. He reinvents. Through gritted teeth and solitary rehab sessions, he rebuilt everything. The knee, the character, the hope. And he came back stronger, louder, ready to reclaim what was his. But here's the catch. Every time he rebuilds, the world moves on. When he rises, it's not to the fanfare he earned, it's to a new era, a new chosen one, a new face on the poster. So he adapts. Again, and again, and again. He burns down every version of himself, Messiah, architect, Visionary thinking maybe this time. They'll see him, not as a role player, not as a reliable utility, but as the reason the show doesn't fall apart. But no matter how bright he burns, he always ends up rebuilding alone. You can feel it in the silence before his entrance hits. The anticipation, the knowledge that the match you're about to watch will mean something, not because of the storyline, not because of the title on the line, but because he's in it. He doesn't steal the show. He is the show. But when it comes to the poster, to the headline, to the media tour, it's always someone else. There's a cruel rhythm to it now. Seth crafts classics while others collect coronations. He builds empires while someone else gets crowned king. It doesn't matter if he's holding the belt, defending the honor of the brand, or literally carrying a division on his back. There's always a bigger push waiting for someone flashier. They'll book him for the opening match at WrestleMania, the technical masterpiece. That wakes up the crowd and sets the tone. They'll hand him feuds with rookies who need credibility, legends who need protecting, divisions that need rebuilding. They trust him with everything, except the main event. Not because he isn't good enough, but because they know he won't complain. Main event DNA, mid-card assignments, night after night. And when someone else fumbles, Seth picks it up. When a golden boy gets injured, or a returning star fizzles out, or a push doesn't land, Seth resets the board. With no spotlight, no glory, just a match that steals the night and a walk backstage through empty applause. It's not jealousy, it's exhaustion, from the inside out. Because what do you do when your best still isn't enough to shift perception? He's wrestled with broken ribs, with torn ligaments, with grief behind his eyes and a smile for the cameras. He's taken the L when the company needed him to. He's carried belts that meant nothing just to make them mean something again. And still, they talk about the next big thing, as if he hasn't been the only constant thing. He doesn't break character. He evolves it. He doesn't miss steps. He builds the rhythm others dance to. But for some reason, he's still the guy they call when Plan A fails, not the guy they build Plan A around. It's a strange kind of isolation to be the benchmark, but never the banner. To be the reason the bar is so high, and still get passed over for the toast. When you live in the main event, but keep getting written into the middle, something breaks. And it's not the body. It's the belief that someday, the world will see you for what you are. He's not waiting to be discovered. He's wondering how much more he can give before he disappears from the story entirely. There's a danger in being too good at your job. You become the fallback, the solution, the one they can count on, not because they believe in you more, but because you ask for less. Less drama, less attention, less ego. Just results. That's what Seth has become. Not a priority, a safety net. He's the professional, the locker room leader, the guy who'll put over a rookie on Saturday and fly cross-country on Sunday to anchor a main event. The guy who doesn't get injured not because he's lucky, but because he trains like it's survival. The guy who doesn't explode on social media or lash out in interviews. Who eats criticism with a grin and calls it fuel. But professionalism has a shadow side. It becomes a reason to be overlooked. When you never miss a step, no one worries about your rhythm. When you never cause trouble, they forget what chaos you're holding back. And when you never ask for the spotlight, they stop offering it. Behind the suit, behind the laughs, behind the dripping sarcasm of the visionary is a man who has learned to carry weight others refuse to touch. He shows up, fully formed, doesn't ask for time off, doesn't break down on live TV, doesn't he cry foul when the push he earned gets rerouted to someone with a louder mouth. And half the resume. They call that maturity. But it comes at a cost. Because no matter how well you perform, how gracefully you lead, how consistently you deliver, in a world that rewards chaos, the calm get forgotten. His reward for being irreplaceable is never being celebrated. He's put over names that weren't ready, worked programs that had no legs, saved cards from falling apart with pure grit and chemistry. And he does it without complaint because he knows the work is what lasts. But what happens when you start to wonder if the work even matters? Not to the fans, to the system, to the people who decide who stands at the center of the billboard, who gets the documentary, who gets the legacy package with violin music and tears when it's all said and done. Because for all the talk of being the best, Seth knows the game. Being the best isn't about skill. It's about narrative. And the narrative has never been his. He's not a rebel. Not a chosen son, not a redemption story. He's the technician who never falters, the professional who never asks for applause. But somewhere deep in that quiet smile is the ache of a man who wonders if being great, without being messy, was the wrong choice all along. Wrestling is theater, and theater rewards noise. The louder you are, the harder you hit. The more absurd your persona, the more the crowd remembers. The more they talk, the more they choose you. As the face of an era, Seth understands this, maybe too well. He's reinvented himself more times than fans can count. The architect, the king's lair, the Monday night messiah, the drip god, the visionary, each evolution sharper than the last, layered with symbolism, color, chaos, costumes that scream, promos that dance on the edge of madness, laughs that echo across arenas. But the louder he gets, the more hollow it sounds, because none of it is noise for its own sake. It's a scream, a desperate, beautiful scream for attention in a system that doesn't listen unless you burn something down. He doesn't shapeshift for fun. He shapeshifts because being himself wasn't enough. The workhorse couldn't get the main event. The champion didn't get the parade. The professional didn't get the pedestal. So he became a visionary not because he saw the future, but because he refused to vanish into the present. And for a while, it worked. The crowd sang his theme. They wore his jackets. They followed the madness like gospel. But still, the spotlight moved on. It is the quiet tragedy of a man outgrowing his mask. Before the world even learns the character's name, he reinvents, they cheer, and then silence. No climb, no coronation, just the next repackaging. And through it all, he keeps performing, not for approval, but to stay alive in the conversation. Because in wrestling, irrelevance doesn't arrive with failure. It arrives with forgetfulness, and the only thing worse than being booed is being ignored. So he screams, in purple suits, in over-the-top monologues, in wild eyes and twisted grins. He screams through reinvention, hoping someone hears the pain behind the performance. Because that's what this has become, performance as survival, not just in the ring, but in the psyche. How many times can a man reintroduce himself before he forgets who he was to begin with? And what does it say about the system when the most consistent, most reliable, most battle-hardened performer of a generation has to become a cartoon just to stay seen? Seth isn't lost. He knows exactly who he is. The tragedy is that everyone else keeps forgetting. Legacy isn't always carved in bronze. Sometimes it's left in silence etched into the spaces no one claps for. He won't be the loudest name in the Hall of Fame montage. He may not get the pyro-laced tribute video with the slow-motion career highlights, playing to a swelling orchestra. There might never be a statue outside headquarters or a move named after him, or a corporate slogan built on his back. But that doesn't mean the legacy isn't real, because somewhere in the DNA of every match that means something, his fingerprints are there. Every young wrestler who walks into a locker room understanding what it means to show up, that is his reflection. Every title that regained its meaning after being held like a prop, his shadows on it. Every fan who didn't come for the hype, but stayed for the heart. They were kept here by men like him. Seth never needed to be the face of a generation. He became the backbone of one. And yet, there's a sting that never fades. Because when you've given more than you were ever asked, when you've walked through injuries, rejection, reinvention, and applause that evaporates too soon, you want something back. Not money, not fame, just recognition. The kind that doesn't fade when a newer name shows up. The kind that tells you, you mattered, you changed this. But he won't ask for it, because asking means hoping. And Seth Rollins stopped hoping for validation a long time ago. He doesn't need a statue. He needs time, because time is what will finally make the world understand what it ignored in real time. One day, the clips will surface. The promos will be revisited. The matches will be rewatched with a wiser eye. And the conversation will shift. The narrative will bend back toward the man who never asked for the mic but earned the entire script. And when that moment comes years from now, maybe decades, there won't be a spotlight, just silence. The same kind that used to haunt him. But this time, it won't feel empty. It'll feel like justice.